Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry and it's time for some more Lone Wolf. We're still playing Book 8 and after an unfortunate misreading of the combat table in a previous episode and then just a straight up unfortunate death, I found an auto kill that I haven't seen for years and it was fun to experience it again. So we're back to the beginning again. Now, I did say that if I was just retreading old steps, I would do that off camera. However, we all know that there is one particular encounter in this book that has stuck in my mind for many a long year. I spent all of book 6 looking for that encounter. I was pretty sure it wasn't in book 7. I may have even looked for it in book 5 a bit, actually. It was not in book 6, it is in this book. And the encounter that I remember was not on the river barge. Oh, trust me, I remember the encounter with Kizor the Necromancer as well. But the one I'm particularly hoping to find is not on the river barge, it's beside a road on the land somewhere. And it could absolutely be on the road from Faro to Ciada or Ciada to the Danarg swamp. However, it's entirely possible it could be on the road from Foina to Faro. And I really didn't want to miss that encounter, so I did a few minutes research off camera before I was starting this episode and found that it was blatantly on the road between Foina and Faro. So if I want to see this encounter, I need to not get the barge and instead travel by road. Which means the very first choice at section 1 would need to be the exact polar opposite of what I chose on my first attempt at this book. So I might as well just start from the beginning all over again, which is totally fine by me. Now, I made a slight mistake last time. Weapon mastery. We're supposed to start with 3 weapons in book 6 and then gain 1 for every book we complete. So complete book 6, we get 1. Complete book 7, we get 1. We are now in book 8. I only added 1 weapon to the list. So let's add 2. Let's just add mace and sword. Mace and axe. Lone Wolf can remember his use of the axe in book 1 as his starting weapon and practice of that for nostalgia's sake. And we'll just add those as well. And mace, because why not practice with some more hafted weapons? We can get the warhammer a bit later as well. And we gain 1 more discipline. Now, on my previous attempt, I took animal control because I had vague memories of it being rather useful in books 8 and 9. Especially as we're heading into a kind of jungle in a swamp where there should be lots of animals and we should gain plenty of opportunities to use it. That being said, realistically, in our previous attempt, we made it from Foina up to Faro, which is, if we ignore the distance to Ciada, it feels like a good first half of the book or first portion of the book, and then the portion from Faro to the Danarg would be the next leg of the journey, then the Danarg swamp itself, a final sort of act, as it were. I wonder if Ogia is where the Ogrons come from, because it's very easy to call them Ogrons, because they're big blue ogres, but Ogron doesn't really roll off the tongue as well as Ogron, just like the Ogryn in 40k are 40k ogres. You know, they're not Ogryn. Arguably they should be, but they're not, because it just, again, harder to pronounce. And the whole point of 40k is that the characters in the setting do not pronounce things correctly because they're way out of touch and barely even remember what they mean. Hence the fact that the Imperial High Gothic, lots of people think it's based on Latin. And lots of the later artists and authors did base it heavily on Latin. But originally it was actually based more on ancient Greek, and then finally became a sort of hybrid of the two. But there's lots of people who think it should just be Latin because maybe they went to a posh school and they learned some Latin or something. I don't know, right? But the whole point is that it's like a hybrid of ancient Greek and Latin with an English accent, not a historically correct accent or pronunciation, because it's essentially a dead language that is being, uttered by people who don't really understand it very well and just using it because of tradition. Because it's supposed to be a technological and social dark age in which, knowledge and wisdom are fading away and people are just kind of using what they get by with blind faith and, remnants of memories of how things were done. It's like, a lot of the equipment that the more powerful warriors use in 40k is relics that should be in a museum. Nobody remembers particularly well how to do the maintenance for these things. They vaguely remember. They don't know how to make any more. And the reason I say some of them should be in a museum is that they are incredibly unstable and prone to overheating and exploding if used incorrectly. Plasma weapons being the obvious one. The reason characters with plasma weapons won't be firing them every turn is that plasma weapons can overheat if fired repeatedly in a short period of time, or if cranked up to maximum power, which, increases the chance of exploding and seriously injuring the wielder. Anyway, back to Magnamund, which has, apart from... Well, look, Joe Deaver worked at Games Workshop for a while. He got an offer from Steve Jackson and Livingston to write some fighting fantasy books, and he kind of pitched the early books of the Lone Wolf series. The concept of a series of game books in which the same character would continue from book to book and items could be carried over. And I think Steve and Ian weren't interested in that so much, because I think this was pre-sorcery when Steve did sorcery. But also, for whatever reason, Joe decided that the amount of money he was offered for this idea was insultingly low and decided he'd go find another publisher. Gary Chalk actually was a Games Workshop artist at the time as well, so they were just off doing their own thing on the side, probably with permission, right? And interestingly, a lot of Gary Chalk's Lone Wolf illustrations, the filler art, reappeared in later Games Workshop publications, again, probably with permission. Part of a friendly thing, this isn't really competition, it's sort of working together. And interestingly, there was another one or two times where Joe seemed to have a falling out over the fee he was being offered and decide to go somewhere else. I'm not calling the guy greedy, because I never met him. And it's probable that publishers were trying to vastly underpay people, but it does seem that, for whatever reason, the amount of money being offered was a sticky subject for him, and one that was contentious. So he didn't seem to see eye to eye with people on his worth or that of other writers in his milieu, as it were. Anyway, let's get back to the adventure. So, we've got our two weapons sorted. I want animal control and size screen. I seem to recall both of those being useful in Book 8 and Book 9, and theoretically, as this is the one with the swamp and the jungle in the swamp, animal control would be very useful. However, From the beginning of the book all the way up to Faro, and indeed I think beyond Faro a bit to the mine along the road to Ciada, we didn't get to use animal control once. And all it did for us was complete the circle of light, which gave us 3 endurance points. Now, we did not have a particularly high endurance total to begin with, a mere 22 points, because we literally rolled a 2. We got the 9 in combat skill, which was great. So yeah, popping up from 28 to 31 endurance would be useful for some of those hard fights. If we go for the Circle of Fire, I believe that has a combat skill improvement. Yes, 1 combat skill, 2 endurance points. If we want to go for Solaris, we'd need invisibility and hunt mastery, which means we wouldn't have animal control or side screen anytime soon. And for some reason I have a frequent blind spot when it comes to Mind Blast and Psy Surge being used against Lone Wolf. I seem to recall that it's just a loss of 2 combat skill, and forget that in the classic books it could often inflict 2 damage per round on Lone Wolf, which is obviously quite devastating. So getting that side screen could be rather important. If we want to go for the Circle of the Spirit, we would need Nexus, Psi Screen and Psi Surge. We already have Divination. So that would theoretically be Book 8, Book 9, Book 10, Book 11, because obviously we don't get one for completing Book 12. So over the next 4 books, we would need to pick these 3 abilities. No. We would need to pick 2 of these 3 abilities, because we could have one right now. So Book 7, we'd get, say, Nexus, which is a nice fun ability, then Psi Screen for completing Book 8, then Book 9 we could get Psi Surge and complete the Circle of the Spirit. So essentially, whatever happens, we're not getting the Circle of the Spirit for the next book, and more importantly, it is a massive investment which locks us out of one of the others: Hunt Mastery, Animal Control, or Invisibility. If we do want to go Circle of the Spirit, the optimal path might be to avoid Animal Control, because Hunt Mastery gets the Circle of Fire and Solaris. Invisibility helps complete that. So we would be looking 1 combat skill, 2 endurance, 2 combat skill, 5 endurance, 5 combat skill, 8 endurance points total. And we'd only be losing out on 3 endurance. No combat skill loss. It does mean we'd miss out on all the fun things with animal control, though. So maybe I should take Psi Screen now, and then decide at the end of the book if I really want to go animal control or not. Obviously taking Psi Screen won't particularly help yet. It'll protect us from a lot of bad things, and it's probably definitely worth taking on that front. Maybe we do that this time. We won't have the extra 3 points of endurance when fighting the Helghast, but we won't be taking 2 points a round, so we'll be in much better shape. So we take Psi Screen, pop it off the list, and now we can protect ourselves mentally from nasty psychic bastards who want to do us ill. There is an improved discipline note for weapon mastery, which I'm going to put back in here. This shouldn't be here. Why is this here? Did I accidentally leave it in when I copied over the character sheet from... We don't need a section listing twice. That's all book 6. This is book 7. We do want to find Roller Rada again and gain that information. So we'll pop this here now. I may need to reorganize. Okay. I may need to reorganize the improved disciplines up here underneath disciplines above law circles. Psi surge. Construct with psychic powers on object. Be able to set up. Oh no, that's not Psi screen. Against magical charms and hostile telepathy. Sure. We have divination. We should obviously also pick some equipment again. So we're going to gain some gold crowns. The usual amount. D10 plus 9, essentially. 2 plus 10 is 12. We get 12. Yes, because the 10 counts as a 0. So it's essentially like plus 9, but sticking with the rules, we get some money. 27 crowns, which is actually going to be phenomenal here. These. Were these riddles on the boat? No. This is the statue in the maze in the previous book. Okay, good. And may choose... Is it 4? 5 items from a list below. Excellent. Well, how many arrows do we have in our quiver? It's already full. Okay. Rope, absolutely. You'll notice that rope no longer takes up 2 slots anymore, unlike the way it operated in the first 5 books. Either Lone Wolf has found some better way of strapping a bundle of rope to the side of his pack, or just packing it more efficiently, or this is some kind of better rope that's just smaller and possibly drawn differently. A potion of Lawnspur, an absolute lifesaver. Should we happen to consume poison once again. The lantern is designed to be self-lighting. You will not need a tinderbox or any other means of creating a flame to light it. But we have the fire sphere of Calt from book 3, so we don't need it. Free meals. This appears to be one item on the list. And if not, we can take all 3 of them. Even so, Pido could eat the poison and still need the potion of Lawnspur. So, and 3 fire seeds. I'm pretty sure that's going to be an item as well. 1 item. So we'll have 6 fire seeds now at our disposal. Excellent. So I've taken the rope, the potion of Lawnspur, the meals, 3 fire seeds. And I don't particularly need any of these items. I don't think I can carry 2 quivers of arrows. That would get a bit ridiculous. And we don't actually get that many opportunities to use them. So there we go. Also, of course, this region uses the Silver Loon, which is 1/4 of a gold crown. Meaning if I travel by road, I think I do get to avoid the riddles on the barge. which were a good way of making money, mind you. So while my favourite encounter exists off the barge, it might not be the best route to take. Let's begin. You leave Elzian under cover of darkness on a trading ship bound for Garfen. It is a trim vessel, lean-prowed and simple in design, one of 1,000 such ships that sail the chain of landlocked seas and lakes dividing the northern and southern continents of Magnamund. Its passage along this great waterway, called the Tentarius, is unlikely to invite undue attention, and it is for this reason that the Elder Magi have placed you on board. Have placed you aboard, even. Ha! The nature of your voyage is secret, but you are not alone, for a guide has been chosen to accompany you on your dangerous mission. His name is Paido, and you probably blatantly met him in the previous book. A tall, ebony-skinned vaqueros who is a master of the art of battle magic. Among his fellow warriors he is a high-ranking lord, respected and honoured for his bravery and skill on the field of battle. Now for the mission that lies ahead he has exchanged his gold and scarlet robes for the clothes of a commoner, a roving adventurer with a sword for hire. It is a disguise you too have adopted to veil your true identity on the long voyage to the land of Telestria, where a rendezvous with royalty awaits you. You sail westwards, a benevolent wind filling the triangular sail and skimming the ship across the still blue waters. The hull seems to slide over the surface of the water rather than cut its way through, and you cannot help but wonder if Paido has conjured some magic to speed your passage. Your first port of call is the city of Talon, where food stocks and fresh water are replenished. Then the voyage continues along the Tentarius to the port of Ohrido, the last stopping place before your ship-bound journey ends at Garfen, a crown capital of Telestria. The crown capital of Telestria. It is an hour past midnight when you dock at Varnos Harbour in Garfen, a sprawling network of quays and cracked stone jetties that shelter great fleets of merchants, traders, and dhows. Silent like a shadow you disembark and follow Paido through the twisting harbour streets, slowly climbing the steep stairs that connect one level of Garfen to the next. Rusty lanterns cast pools of yellow light beneath the timbered balconies, illuminating the stalls of merchants and vendors who will haggle, brag, and barter in the crowded streets till dawn. Paido halts at an iron-shod door and raps the grille with the hilt of his blue steel sword. A man's face appears, stern and handsome, with smooth dark hair and keen, intelligent eyes. A smile of recognition softens his lordly features when he sees Paido. In an instant, the door swings open and you are ushered inside. The man's name is Adamas, Lord Constable of the Royal Citadel, protector and cousin of Queen Yvain of Telestria. For centuries, a strong bond of friendship has existed between the royal household and the magicians of Dessi, and, when called upon by the Elder Magi to help you in your quest, Queen Yvain pledged her support without hesitation. She has volunteered the services of Lord Adamas, who is to ensure your safe and unhindered passage through Telestria to the borders of the Danarg. At dawn, after snatching a few hours' sleep, you are taken by coach to the East City Wharf, where an empty corn barge is waiting to ferry you upriver. Haulage is provided by 8 large gorkas, hairy ox-like creatures from the plains of Slovia, which are harnessed to the barge by chains. They lumber along the cobbled towpath, continually kept in line by the stinging lash of the barge owner's Zulhide whip. The next day the barge arrives at a small river village called Lona, where a detachment of Lord Adamas's cavalry, resplendent in surcoats of scarlet and grey, provide you with horses for the cross-country journey to the fortified city of Foina. Ill news greets you in Foina. The city of Triple Towers, Zegron, a warlord of Zana, a ruler of the barren highlands of Ogia, has amassed an army of Drakarim warriors. 3 days ago they attacked the border town of Lurkos to the north. The Telestrian garrison put up a brave and spirited defence, but they were hopelessly outnumbered by the bloodthirsty Ogian horde that drove through the perimeter walls with battering rams and engines of war. The Drakarim face-raised Lukos to the ground, and only a handful of survivors escaped to tell of the dreadful battle. "The situation is grave," reports Lord Adamus on returning from an emergency conclave of his fellow Telestrian knights. "For decades, Zegron and his minions have raided our northern territories, but never before with such determination and strength. We must mobilize our army for war, for it is war that Ogia has invited by its unforgivable attack on Lukos. I must return to Garfen to muster my retainers in preparation for battle and inform the Queen of the evil that threatens her realm. I can no longer escort you to the Danarg, though your quest must proceed in spite of all that conspires against it." He sends for his scribe, who arrives with helpers laden with the paraphernalia of his craft. He dictates an order of safe conduct and sets the impression of his signet ring onto the hot wax seal before passing the parchment to you. "Our northern people are a frontier breed, wary and suspicious of strangers. If challenged, show this pass, and your safe passage will be assured by all who are loyal to Queen Yvain." We will mark the pass. Many sections in this book assume that you possess the pass, therefore you should not discard it during this adventure, because you won't be allowed to. So, Telestrian Pass of Safe Passage. Assumed possession. No. Possession is assumed. Early next morning, Lord Adamus accompanies you and Pydo to the main square of Foina. It is from here that your quest begins. The first leg of your journey to the Danarg will take you north to the town of Faro, which nestles in the fertile uplands of Telestria. There are two ways of reaching the town. You can travel by road, or you can take a barge along the river Foen. Consult the map before deciding which route to take. Well, if we go by barge, we'll be repeating our previous experience, so let's take the road instead. The morning sky is filled with a sullen grey haze, and around you the tall plains grass undulates like a green sea, stirred to motion by a chill westerly breeze. The Great North Road cuts a straight line to the horizon, with tracks that lead to cottages and farmsteads branching off at regular intervals. Sheep and cattle graze by the roadside, and the air is rich with the scents of the farmyard, flowers, and damp grass. "We should reach Faro by sundown," you comment, checking your position on the map. "Maybe," replies Pydo cautiously, and points to a menacing streak of blue-black cloud rolling across the skyline from the west. "Just so long as we stay ahead of the storm." By noon you have put 30 miles behind you, but still have 30 more to ride before you reach the town of Faro. Steadily the sky is darkening, and what began as fine drizzle has now developed into sheets of heavy rain. Both of you are drenched, and your horses are beginning to steam as they splash through the ankle-deep puddles that punctuate the muddy highway. Through the pall of rain you see an inn on the banks of a stream whose waters are greatly swollen by the storm. A wide stone bridge spans the rushing torrent, and a mill with a thatched roof stands close by. We could stop at the inn, cross the bridge and seek shelter at the mill, or continue on, ignore the discomfort and ride on through the storm. I think riders of the storm it is to be. It is entirely possible that attempting to stop at the inn or seek shelter at the mill will result in failure and needing to ride on anyway, but I don't want to necessarily miss this opportunity now. There may be some event that happens on a specific timeline that is missed, we could arrive too late for something. I'm obviously, bizarrely, thinking not of my favourite encounter from this book, but Fighting Fantasy Revenge of the Vampire. I think book 54, it might be. The only Fighting Fantasy book that is impossible to complete without cheating. And it's all to do with timing. You need to get somewhere quickly enough to encounter someone before they move on. However, if you go quickly enough, it's impossible for you to encounter them because you didn't go slowly enough. And if you go too slowly, it won't matter because you'll have missed them anyway. Yeah. That's the book where you're chasing after the vampire's coffin, which his henchman is driving in the carriage. And you're following him until they stop overnight at the inn. You have an option to obtain a horse, and the greedy farmer will charge you all your money, so you have no coins left at all. And then when you get there, you are told if you want to go into the inn and spend the night there, you need to spend a gold piece, which you don't have because you've just spent all your money on the horse. So you literally can't take that option. If you walk, instead of buying the horse, you arrive too late, and they've gone because you arrive by morning, or you can go in and spend gold to save a night, but it's too late to have that particular encounter that would have happened earlier in the evening. And you need that encounter to fight with the henchman who has a magic sword, because if you defeat him, you get the magic sword, because later on, there is an unavoidable encounter where you have to defeat a monster that can only be hurt by the magic sword you got earlier, and that's the only opportunity you get to gain that magic sword, by buying the horse to get to the inn, which you then can't afford to enter. So it's literally impossible. Now, the equipment section of that book tells you explicitly that you keep all your coins in your backpack or money pouch or whatever, except for one coin, which you keep as your lucky last coin in a hollow boot heel. However, the section where the farmer makes you pay all your gold says he makes you pay all your gold. It doesn't say he makes you pay all your gold except for that one you've got hidden, which you somehow don't have to give him. It doesn't say the farmer says, how much money have you got? Oh, what a coincidence. That's how much I want. It says, he names his price and it happens to be all the money you have. It doesn't say one less than all the money you have. The only way to complete the book is to presume you get to keep that last coin after paying the farmer for the horse, and cheat and have a coin you're not entitled to have because you should have spent it already. And that's literally the only way you can complete Revenge of the Vampire, which is a shame, because apart from that, it's a really good book. Right, so, getting back on track, we're going to ride on through the storm. The rain beats down relentlessly as you ride the featureless highway to Faro. Thunder rumbles over the western hills like the growl of doom wolves stalking their prey. Gradually, the muddy road descends into a wide valley and a track joins it from the east. A battered signpost at the junction points along the track. It says, Topham, 9 miles. We could continue the ride north to Faro. We've got like 30 miles to go. Or try and rest in Topham. And here's the important thing. The 2 illustrations that go with this encounter indicate heavy rain. If we had spent time at the inn or at the mill, it might not be raining by the time we left. Or we could just end up having some disaster that prevents us from being able to stay. Or it could just rain for so long we decide, okay, sod it, we have to carry on our journey anyway. But if these encounters can only happen while it's raining, we've got to be going now. Let's change direction and ride east to Topham. Now, Fighting Fantasy rule here says go north before east, unless you have a good reason. And our good reason is we might want to stop and get a bit of rest, maybe gather some supplies. And here is the beautiful picture. Oh, you know that either this one or the other one is going to be the episode thumbnail. If you recognize this picture, you know what's coming next. The track winds through the centre of the valley, following the course of a stream that meanders towards the river Fowen. It flows alongside a white brick house, turning its water wheel with a comforting regular sound. As you ride past the house and over a tiny humpbacked bridge, a cluster of cottages and an abbey come into view. In the grounds of the abbey a burial is taking place. A circle of monks dressed in hooded brown robes are lowering a coffin into one of the freshly dug graves. Into one of several freshly dug graves, implying there has been a lot of death in this place recently, perhaps disease. It's also worth noting the monks have no visible faces or hands, which implies the sleeves of their robes are too long. Even if they're trying to keep their hands inside their sleeves to keep them a bit warm and dry, and are supporting the coffin that way. These look a little pointy. That head might be a bit small, but it's just lowered. We do have the Magnakai discipline of divination. The monks are communicating telepathically. Although you do not recognize the language they are using in their mind speech, you sense that they are anxious and uneasy in your presence. The monks of Telestri are infamous for their gluttony. Tales of their 30-course meals and week-long banquets are well known throughout Magnamund. However, despite their voluminous robes, you cannot help but notice how emaciated these monks appear to be. Almost as if the robes were designed for larger individuals. These may be imposters, and they are burying a lot of bodies. We can continue on our way without stopping at the abbey, or stop to pay our respects for the deceased, bearing in mind we have been warned this could be very, some kind of ambush. As you approach, the monks step back from the grave and draw themselves into a line. Their hooded heads stay bowed, and their hands remain hidden inside the generous folds of their robes. You ask the name of the unfortunate deceased, but the echo of your voice and the constant drip of the steady rain is your only answer. All at once, as if in response to a silent signal, the monks throw back their hoods to reveal ghastly, fleshless faces. "By the gods!" gasped Pido. They emit a hideous shriek, panicking the horses. As you fight to control your frightened animal, the skeleton monks spring forward to attack. "Do you possess the Somersword?" "Yes, we do, and we have it upon our person." Look at this individual. This, again, is a very memorable picture. Look at that dark steel dagger. As you unsheath the sun sword, a shimmering pulse of golden flame engulfs the blade from hilt to tip. Your attackers hesitate as the pure light washes over their hellish faces. They shriek with malice and leap forward once more, their bony hands now clutching weapons of black steel previously hidden beneath their robes. This is a bunch of Vordaks. They have a combined combat skill of 28 and an endurance of 40. Excellent. To our 34, we're fighting at +6. This may not be a very long encounter. Unless you possess the Magnakai discipline of animal control, which I swapped out for size screen, remember? Deduct 3 points from your combat skill for the duration of the fight. Okay, so we're only fighting at +3. Oh dear, what a shame, it's still massive. These undead are immune to Mind Blast, but not Psi Surge. Remember to double all endurance points losses sustained by your enemy due to the power of the Summer Sword. Well then, let them have it. Let them taste the power of the sun. Oh, we rolled a 9. 9 in +3. Enemy loses 16 endurance. Lone Wolf loses... Wait, no, that's 10. Enemy loses 14. 2 14s are 28. They're down to 12 endurance points. And again, please, a 6. Lone Wolf loses 2 endurance points, and the enemy loses, well, 20. The vile Vordaks have been dispatched. We're taking them off the list. And we'll get that health back in a couple of sections anyway, so it'll all be fine. Your ears are filled with a loathsome hissing as the bodies of your slain enemies dissolve into the mud. You stare at their smouldering remains, and a cold chill grips your heart as you speculate on why these foul servants of the Darklords came to this sleepy Telestrian hamlet. I don't think they were here looking for us. I think they are infiltrating the kingdom. Inside the abbey you discover the grisly answer. Scattered throughout the chambers and corridors are the bodies of the dead monks, their lifeless faces frozen in masks of horror. Several have been stripped of their robes, presumably to provide a disguise for their killers. "Why would the Darklords want to take control of this abbey?" asks Pydo, horrified at the sight of such slaughter. "I fear it is part of their plan to conquer Telestria," you reply. "It is always their strategy to infiltrate a land with agents before invading. When invasion is launched, these agents rise up and attack from within." "So you think that the Darklords plan to invade Telestria?" says Pydo, aghast at the possibility of such an event. "Well, I mean, the warlords using Drakarim." "I suspect that their plan is already underway," you say thoughtfully. "Perhaps the destruction of Lukos was masterminded not in Zanar, but in Helgedad." Pydo helps you bury the monks in the graves already dug by their killers. As you cover the last of the bodies with soil, you notice a small pear-shaped stone lying on the pathway. Its speckled blue surface is mirror-smooth, and despite its size, it feels remarkably heavy. You suspect it is very valuable and decide to keep it. Mark this lodestone on your action chart as a special item that you carry in your belt pouch. If you already carry your maximum number of special items, there is no maximum number of special items. You must discard one in favour of this new item. Many sections in this book assume that you possess the lodestone, therefore you should not discard it during this adventure unless you are forced to do so, or given an explicit opportunity. Well then. I'm going to presume... blue surface? Alright. Well, we know what's happening now, don't we? That is section 202. We're going to recover a point of endurance and go and check if there is some kind of secret maximum amount of special items that we are permitted to carry, or if it's like one in each place. Yeah, have to carry equipment. Special items are not carried in the backpack. When you discover a special item, you'll be told how to carry it. The maximum number of special items that can be carried on any adventure is 12. When the fuck did that rule come in? Any additional special items must be left for safekeeping at the Kai Monastery. Okay, in which case, is that where the notion of storing things at the Kai Monastery came in? Was that a book 6 rule? Because it definitely wasn't there in the first few books. Okay, so in that case, I'm not going to suddenly... Okay, 1, 2, 3... Barnard's Crystal Star Amulet. We don't need it in this book, but in book 9 it will come in useful. Shield is 4. Waistcoat is 5. Padded leather waistcoat is 6. Silver helmet is 7. Fire sphere is 8. Then we go to the safe passage for lodestone. That puts us on 10. And the rest are all fire seeds and quiver of arrows. So that puts us at 12 already, doesn't it? Interesting. Okay, so I'll need to rearrange the others into a kind of storage section, but for now, we now know there's a limit. And as we're at another non-combat section, I'm going to restore that final point of endurance back up to 28. Shafts of sunlight break through the slate-grey cloud, and the rain eases off and finally stops. You ride across the rolling valley floor towards the River Fowen until the track stops at a ramshackle house perched precariously on the riverbank. An old wooden jetty juts out from the side of the house, its platform gets almost submerged in the rain-swollen river. A notice board standing in front of the house reads, "Ferry House Landing. Passenger barges to Faro embark from this jetty. Barges to Fowena embark from opposite bank. No cattle, wagons, caravans or herd animals unless by special arrangement." We could wait here for a barge to Faro, or investigate the ferry house. And you know what? I think that's something to do in the next episode. We've had my favourite encounter in the book. You know, it's not that in-depth. Why do I like it so much? The Vordaks are disguising themselves as monks, performing a fairly mundane action. A burial. You know, at first sight, it's very innocent. Nothing to suspect, right? The only suspicious thing is the large amount of graves that have been freshly dug recently. You might think there's some pestilence, or some act of war has decimated the local community. And then you find actually it's hellish undead creatures disguised as monks. This is a great kind of way for a GM to set up an encounter. You could have... I mean, I've actually literally done this when I was running Ravenloft back in, like, 2nd edition at one point. I had an encounter which was, hey, there's some monks in a graveyard burying a coffin. The monks were ghouls in disguise who had been eating the monks in the monastery and were burying the leftover remains in the ground to cover it up. And the players just thought it was monks doing a burial, and they walked up, said hello, and it didn't end well. One of the player characters was paralyzed and eaten alive in front of a second player character who ran off and hid in the bushes, and the ghouls just ate his friend in front of him completely, and then they left. And he was heavily traumatized and had a lifelong fear of fields, particularly graveyards, you know, open spaces where there could be monsters coming from all directions to get him. Kind of the opposite of claustrophobia, like agoraphobia almost, but not because it's a big wide open space, but because there could be enemies all around, and he, you know, prefer the safety of walls and that he can put his back against to say there's nothing coming at me from behind there. Oh yeah, there blatantly could be ghosts and things exist. Anyway, it was a very memorable session, actually. Yeah. So I will end this episode here with a note to self. And it could be argued that 3 fire seeds is 1 item, so that's 2 batches of 3 instead of 1 batch of 6, in which case I might just knock that down to 3. there's a lot of things from previous books that aren't going to be particularly helpful, like the map of the Stormlands, map of Veretta, map of Vasagonia, for example, you know. But there we are. Whew. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Not quite sure how long it is, actually. And I'll look forward to seeing you all in the next one. I'll say goodbye for now, though, and cheerio, everyone. See you all soon.